In a world full of volatile currencies, perhaps no other monetary contender in recent years has made a bigger splash than Bitcoin. And just recently, New York lawmakers proposed regulations on the digital currency, while Bitcoin ATM machines are popping up everywhere from New Zealand to Chicago. Yes, whether you love it, hate it, or still don't quite understand how it works, this decentralized internet money is only growing in popularity. So to get a better understanding of Bitcoin, as well as go over a few other important issues in the news right now, I'm joined by journalist and host of the David Seaman Hour, David Seaman. What is going on, man? Good to have you here.
Likewise, good
Always
to be here.
amazing to have you in studio. How can Bitcoin revolutionize people's savings, and why is kind of the current banking establishment just failing, and especially doesn't apply to interest rates that could...
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you and I are basically the same age, and our generation, we experienced the financial crisis firsthand. Really sucked. It was a hard couple of years, and we, as in the taxpayers, gave nearly $1 trillion to these banks. And what did we get in return? How did they repay the favor when they were starting to do well? They foreclosed on millions of middle-class people. So I have no sympathy for the banks, and I'm excited about Bitcoin because if you look at the math and if you do some research, this will eventually eat into some of their major profit centers. And this is a classic case of analog to digital. You look at Blockbuster, which was very powerful in the entertainment industry, non-existent today. They're just empty stores that have been replaced by Subways or whatever. That is going to happen to America's banks. And what's really cool and fascinating and weird, we're 2 blocks away from the White House right now. And the NSA and the CIA are tapping all of our stuff. They're aware of Bitcoin, and they haven't put down the boot yet. And even the Chinese government, which is far more oppressive than ours, they're letting people buy Bitcoins. If you look online at the flows of money out of fiat and into peer-to-peer currencies, it's like nonstop China, and then second is us. And there's some money coming from South America, some from Europe. But really, it's the US and China that are driving this. And where this, to answer your question, savings are important for everybody, but especially for the middle class. Chase, one of the nation's largest banks, I checked their rates yesterday. For a savings account, you'll get 1/100th of 1%. So if you were to deposit, $100,000 for a year, you get $10. Whereas Bitcoin is strictly limited. There are only 13 million out there right now, and the middle of the next century, or sometime at least very far in the future beyond our lifetimes, the total will be 21 million coins, and that's it. No Federal Reserve chairwoman deciding that the economy is down, so they have to print more money. So if you believe that this currency will take off, as many people do, it's accepted by Dell now, and a number of other public companies. Actually, Dell is now private, but it's accepted by big companies. If you believe it's going to continue to grow, it's a limited environment, and that's completely different from things like the dollar or the euro or the Chinese yuan.
Right, it's crippling the world right now, David. The dollar is, of course. How can Bitcoin and digital currencies, I guess, in general, help people who may be living under crippling sieges like in Gaza or states that are suppressive?
Here's where it gets really cool. Let's not even go to Gaza. Let's say you're a Chinese entrepreneur. They have really strict capital controls. You can only get something like $50,000 out of the country per year. What if you're just sick of China and you want to emigrate to the United States or Canada or Europe? If you have money, $50,000 is not a lot to move your whole family out. That's all you can take. So if you buy Bitcoin, you can actually memorize a password. It's known as a brain wallet. As long as it's strong enough, there are tools out there like Electrum that will allow you to do this. You memorize this 12-word seed. They can take your gold. They can take the money you have on your person. They cannot take something in your brain. So the second you get to Europe or the US, you type in that code, you have all your Bitcoins. It's transformative.
Wow.
It really is, something that's going to change the relationship between government and individual.
But I guess, and please enlighten me, but I mean, people using the service, like people in China or let's say Gaza, for example, aren't they always going to be subjected to the government regulations and laws, I guess, in those respective countries?
The thing about Bitcoin is to stop it would be like saying we're going to stop BitTorrent.
Yeah.
So you don't want to put into place regulations where it makes the government look dumb. Because the US government, for example, could say BitTorrent is bad for Hollywood, we want to stop it, but then what are you going to do? You're going to go to every single person's house and stop BitTorrent?
Right, but the IRS is a different beast.
The IRS will take a few years to catch up to it, and then it becomes an issue of when you cash back out into fiat, you'll have to pay capital gains, which I think is reasonable. I mean, you're making money, you should pay something. But beyond that, it's going to be very challenging, and they're going to, rather than regulate Bitcoin to change the way Bitcoin works, it's something that's so powerful at this point, they're going to have to change their laws. And I don't mean that as some kind of, threat or anything. That's just, it's the largest, it's I think 256 times more powerful than the 500 biggest supercomputers put together at this point, because so many people are mining it around the world. It is unstoppable.
Yeah, governments are just going to have to catch up with this. But do you think decentralization, I mean, clearly it's one of the answers to this central banking monopoly crushing so many people right now, but do you think that it's also the answer in terms of the political system?
For sure. I mean, we're in D.C., and people talk about the military-industrial complex. Why are we shipping bombs over to Israel that are then used on the civilian population in Gaza? Why is any strife happening in the world today when we're so advanced as a species? You know, we've sent probes out to the edge of our solar system. Why are we still killing each other? That's very primitive stuff. And we're not even doing it over resources in a lot of cases. We're doing it to preserve the profits of people who make bombs. It's outrageous. This does away with that because governments cannot create their own money. Another name for these currencies is math-based currencies. Uses really advanced cryptography. Nobody can fake a Bitcoin, so you can't create new ones unless it's part of the schedule.
And so I guess, you know, let's move on to the drunk. We have about a minute left, but I mean, here we have Obama saying we just tortured some folks, but he's saying don't be too sanctimonious about it. I mean, doesn't it make you feel good to just hear how much Obama can level with us average Joes about how much he loves waterboarding, man?
I love that he just released on whitehouse.gov why he doesn't plan on legalizing marijuana in response to the New York Times. Includes Rand Institute studies, like 1970s junk science. Meanwhile, we tortured some folks, but let's not be too sanctimonious, but marijuana is dangerous, and we need to condemn that on the White House website. Like, what kind of crazy world are we living in when smoking weed is condemned by Obama, but this is not?
We tortured some folks.
We tortured some folks, we spy on some folks. Look, folks, I'm real sorry, you know.
We beat up some cats, we tortured some folks. Yet you can't smoke weed, David, otherwise all hell will break loose, I guess.
Sure.
Gotta keep those bombs flying. Thank you so much, David Seaman, journalist, host of the David Seaman Hour. Really appreciate you coming on.